Hello, everybody. You're listening to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio Clutch with Keon Rose. And, I mean, we still have some college football stuff to talk about. I didn't get into everything yesterday. There was a lot to talk about. I think I ranted and raved about UTC for about 15 minutes because they're amazing. That's an amazing football team to watch. And so now I've taken up the cause, too. I've taken up the cause of UTC take down North Dakota State. They're the evil empire, and we'll be doing North Dakota State updates here also, so that we can map the collision course between the Mocs and the Bison, obviously. So what I want to do is try and figure out how we can better organize things to get the national media behind us. North Dakota State obviously beating an FBS school, or nearly beating an FBS school last week. No, they did win that game. What am I talking about? They did win that game. So they came very close to being ranked nationally, which an FCS school has never done, but we've had some schools be close. Appalachian State, obviously, when they beat Michigan all those many years ago, they were a school that got very close. I believe that North Dakota State got ranked 26th, if I'm not mistaken, or not 26th, 28th in that ballpark range. So they just missed being nationally ranked as an FCS school, and that's pretty incredible. And someone's going to take them down. The cool thing about rivalries and dynasties in sports is that dynasties exist to be taken down. We all tune in and watch the dynasty because we're all rooting against the dynasty. So to the Mocs, I say, why not? Why not us? You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio Clutch with Keon Rose. I rewatched the Auburn Texas A&M game, and look, I don't know how do we lose? How do we get rid of Gus Malzahn? I understand there's a situation where Gene Chizik is already being paid, which by the way, the golden parachute gig is my favorite job. I used to think my dream job was radio, and I do love this job a lot. My real dream job is being paid not to coach football, because I already don't do that. I already don't coach football, so I would like to be chilling with Gene Chizik and Charlie Weiss and a bunch of dudes that are getting paid to not coach football. I'm already not doing it, so why don't I get paid for it? That's really the situation where I'm at with those guys. I really want to know, can we do that? Can we join them? And also, can we add Gus Malzahn to the Golden Parachute Fund? Because the man is completely lost. Here's the thing. He was brought in to be an offensive mastermind, an offensive genius, and I think he has lived up to the bill. I was even watching, even in the Auburn and Texas A&M game, Auburn had some plays that picked up huge chunk yardage because the play was designed well. Ran a lot of jet sweeps and stuff. But the Sean White situation, how do you not know who your quarterback is? And how is it that you haven't managed to recruit anybody that can run your system? At all. It's not like he's recruited guys that can kind of run it, but they're just not great. You know what I mean? They're all right. It's not like he's recruited guys like that. He's recruited guys that can't run the system. Like Sean White, really not very mobile. His pocket awareness is awful. He can't run the system then, because your system involves a lot of running and a lot of looks where the quarterback is doing a lot of read option things and trying to show the defense that he's a threat to run. But Sean White's not a threat to run at all. Sean White's not a threat to run. He simply cannot do it. Okay? And then you've got John Franklin, who came in later in the game, JF3, which I will never call him that again because I feel really weird about that. You can't, that's not a nickname. That's just your initials. But anyhow, John Franklin III comes into the game, and I got to tell you, the offense it moved better because he can run. But now you've got another problem. You can't throw. He's not consistently accurate throwing the football. So you end up in a situation where if he ever has to scramble, he's good. If you run a read option play or the jet sweep or a triple option deal where he is a threat to run and you have to account for his speed, you're good. If you ever have to throw the football like they did on that 2-point conversion that they went for at the end of the game, then guess what? You are done. He can't throw the ball accurately. And the pocket awareness for him is also terrible, though it's not as bad as Shaun White. Like there was a play where Shaun White, I was having Auburn's left tackle was being driven backwards into Shaun White. But like he's blocking Myles Garrett. So, you know, what the hell else is he supposed to do? He's hanging on for dear life, but he's keeping him in front of him. And Shaun White feels the pressure of the left tackle being driven into him. And instead of running away from Garrett, he runs directly into his arms. What is that? And while I could blame the quarterbacks ad nauseum, I could also blame the man who recruited them. You have an offense. You're supposed to be an offensive genius, brilliantly offensive, all of these things. You need a quarterback who can run all of that stuff, or the offense just looks bad. And Gus Malzahn looks absolutely lost on those sidelines. Like he can't figure out which guy to go with. I blasted him after week 1 because he thought he could run 3 quarterbacks out there and just change them in and out for the down and distance, which is absolutely silly and the stupidest thing I've ever seen happen on a television. But honestly, I mean, it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen happen on a television since at least the end of Lost. The end of Lost is arguably one of the stupidest things I've ever seen happen on a television. But it didn't work, and it didn't work so badly that it was obvious that it would never have worked. And that's where Gus Malzahn ought to come under fire. But like after watching Shaun White play for an entire half of football and look about as lost and look about as inept as you possibly could, like what else was he supposed to do? Like I want to run this offense with a pocket passer. I feel like that's what he wants to do. He wants to run his offense with a pocket passer, but because Shaun White is so limited in virtually every other way, he can't do it. Got to run out Franklin, but now you don't have your pocket passer. Like Franklin is limited in all of the ways that Shaun White isn't, and completely handicapped in all of the ways that Shaun White is. It's weird. It's one of the most perplexing things I've ever seen. Auburn is in a lot of trouble because of this. I just don't see this as an offense that can ever flourish with these guys at quarterback. Gus Malzahn's buyout is something like $14 million, if I recall correctly. So you can't just fire him, even though I would just fire him. And I read a story today. It was a very hilarious and interesting story whereby there was a fan who started a GoFundMe being the site that allows people to, crowdsource fundraising. You can make a GoFundMe page for just about anything. Like say you want to help feed kids in your neighborhood, you can start a GoFundMe to help that happen. And people on the internet can read your cause. And if they like your cause and believe in your cause, they donate you money. And you can go about and do whatever it is you have to do. Somebody started a GoFundMe to get Gus Malzahn's buyout money. And I have a couple of questions. Obviously, they're obvious questions. I don't think that I'm a genius here for thinking of these questions. The one question is it even feasible for these fans to get the $14 million together to buy out Gus Malzahn? That's one, which there's enough Auburn fans out there, and they are angry enough. If everybody donates like $100, you could have the money ready. But then that leads to the second question, which is, like, if you're Auburn, do you actually take these people up on buying out Gus Malzahn's contract? Like, if they raise the money, don't you have to? I'm now into the realm of the ridiculous somewhat, but don't you have to? If they could raise the money to buy out his contract, it tells you two things. A, You have the money. That's buyout money you don't have to spend. So then you just get to go out there and hire another coach, presumably a good one this time, a coach that is good for longer than a single season. Because that's Auburn's deal. You hire a coach that's good for a season. You get Gene Chizik. He's good for one season. And then you have to fire him because it gets so awful so fast. And you're still paying Gene Chizik, so I can understand why it is that you do not want to fire Gus Malzahn. But I just think it's hilarious because I remember reading the Athens magazine that came out in the summer about the SEC edition of Athens. And they were talking about coaches on the hot seat. And Kevin Sumlin was pretty high up on the list. Gus Malzahn wasn't. And I just thought that was strange. Because Gus Malzahn, I understand the contract makes Gus Malzahn a hard fire. But Kevin Sumlin's contract makes him a hard fire. And B, Gus Malzahn, I think there are a lot more question marks about him than there is Kevin Sumlin. Like, Kevin Sumlin has just gone through the revolving door of quarterbacks. Like, guys just don't want to stay there, which does speak to the coach a little bit, but it does speak to some things about the culture beyond the coach. Like, maybe they just don't like the campus and everything else, even though both quarterbacks have come out as saying that like they want structure and discipline, and Texas A&M doesn't give you that, which explains Johnny Manziel to about a T. But he had the revolving door of quarterbacks. But once he found a quarterback, when he had Johnny Manziel, he was good. When he has Trevor Knight now, Trevor Knight is balling out. Trevor Knight looks good. In that game, Trevor Knight was throwing the ball all across the yard. He does his little sidearm flick. I think it looks cool. It's surprisingly accurate. I mean, I know he's not 100% accurate. He's not the most accurate quarterback, but he's got the arm strength to get the ball all over the field. And then, of course, he's got the legs. He can run if need be. He's got the green light to take off if anything gets scary in the pocket for him. And when he does take off, he tends to pick up first downs as he does so. Also, Trevor Knight is pretty good out of the read option as well, lining up in the pistol. So I really like what A&M has been able to do with him. But Kevin Sumlin has proven that he's been very good when he's gotten a good quarterback, and he's managed to recruit a couple. Even the quarterbacks that left, Kyler Murray and Allen, I do not remember his first name. I'm so bad with names, y'all. Those two guys were pretty good guys. Like, when I watched them play, they were pretty solid quarterbacks. You weren't able to hang on to them and keep them. But when it comes to having a quarterback, Kevin Sumlin is at least able to go, this is what my offensive system looks like. I need a quarterback that's got who's fairly accurate and who's quite mobile, who's very mobile and can move around in the pocket and who can escape the pocket if the need arises. He's figured all that out. How is it that Gus Malzahn has not figured this out, or figured out which one of his three guys is the guy that closely matches what it is that he wants to do? And look, you can be wrong. Evaluating quarterbacks is not an exact science. It's something that is very difficult to do, and it's not something that everybody gets correctly. Even down at LSU, you see them winning with the guy from Purdue as opposed to Brandon Harris, who it is that they had for ages and thought, look, Brandon Harris is our guy to run our boring, unimaginative offense. As it turns out, he wasn't the guy. But like, there was at least a level of conviction there. Like, this is what we thought this was going to be. You cannot still be jumping in and out of quarterbacks week 3 and really not knowing who this guy is, or rotating between 3 quarterbacks in week 1. Like, Gus Malzahn, I'm not sure he knows what he's doing. His problems center around quarterback, and how it is that was not something that was strongly targeted. Like, he doesn't even have a true freshman to turn to and say, okay, look, we don't have a quarterback. Let me develop this guy. Give me another year. You don't even have that. And this would have been the year to do it when you look all over the landscape of college football and you've got true quarterbacks starting all over the place. Even Saban is starting a true freshman at quarterback. Like, Shane Buechele at Texas and Jalen Hurts at Alabama are 2 guys starting at quarterback as freshmen for major college football programs. With A, you've got a guy in Nick Saban who never does that kind of thing, and B, you got a guy in Charlie Strong who really doesn't feel like doing that kind of thing because he's on the hot seat too, but he's going to take a gamble and start the freshman. You don't even have that guy to turn to if you're Gus Malzahn. You don't even have him. You can't buy any more time from this fan base. And if you keep on looking awful, you're not going to be able to buy any time from the administrators either. It just looks ridiculous and bad. How do you come out here not looking like you know what you're doing? Like, I'm about to add Gus Malzahn to the list of guys that really should never have become head coaches. And it's not a very super long list of guys, but like Lane Kiffin is one of those guys. I strongly believe Lane Kiffin, he should never be a head coach. If Lane Kiffin is your head coach, you got a problem. Maybe one day when he gets older, because, you know, just like all jobs, you get wisdom with age. You get wisdom with age. Like for instance, in radio, I'm better now than I was when I started this journey about a year ago. And I hope to get a whole lot better. I think a lot of people prefer to listen to older radio hosts. There's somebody that has experience, that has life experiences that are very similar to theirs, that are, you know, they have kids and you have kids. I don't have kids, so I'll have trouble relating you to that, and I have trouble relating to that necessarily. But I hear Colin Cowherd all the time. Anytime he's got an example to make about a point, a lot of times it involves, well, here's how I raised my kids. This is something that also similarly applies. Because having experience gives you that knowledge. Being older gives you that knowledge. Lane Kiffin ain't there yet. Lane Kiffin is still a giant man child. And until he stops tweeting stuff that makes him sound like a giant man child, he ought not to be a head coach. Just a plain fact. We'll see what the deal is with Will Muschamp, but I just think that, you know, at the time when he was at Florida, the way he was behaving himself, the way he was carrying himself, not necessarily head coaching material, in my opinion. Not necessarily. There's a certain way that I want to see a head coach carry himself that he just doesn't. You know? And it's weird because there's a fine line there. Like Brett Bielema does come off as head coaching material. And Arkansas, by the way, a very quiet 3-0. Did they sneak past some people? Yeah. But they're 3-0. They'll take it. But here's the deal, though. I think we might be at that point where, you know, Gus Malzahn should be a coordinator, should be a head coach. I think it's starting to look like that. You remember the Patriots? They've got Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels' little stint, his little run as head football coach of the Denver Broncos, if you recall that there was a time when Josh McDaniels was a head football coach, which is a very easy thing to forget because his tenure was so short and so forgettable that, I mean, it's really a blip on the radar of history. But he's one of those guys. And maybe he's pretty young too. Shouldn't be a head coach just yet. Just not capable of being a head coach. And some guys, no matter how old they get, they should just not be a head coach. They're so good at designing offenses that they're not really all the rest of the stuff that being a head coach is. They really shouldn't be caught up in any of that. And Gus Malzahn strikes me as one of those guys. Because how do you not have a quarterback? Like, recruiting is part of a head coach's job. How do you not have a quarterback? Because that's what's really hampering that offense. There's no quarterback that can run that offense. And how do you manage to recruit 3 guys, all of which have certain talents that could run your offense, but none of them having talents that could really run your offense? Like, if you could combine John Franklin and Sean White into one person, A, you'd have a hell of a football player. But B, you'd actually have the person who could run that offense. Because when I like watching Auburn pick up big yards, it's crazy. Like they had a lot of big plays, and a lot of those big plays weren't through the air. A lot of those big plays were on the ground when John Franklin was in the game. And I'm like, man, that's how you know he really is good at coaching an offense, because he was able to convince Texas A&M that they didn't know which way that Auburn was going to run, knowing full well that there was no threat of the pass forthcoming. And they gashed him on a few plays. They just couldn't get into the end zone Because as the field starts to shrink, like, you really need to be able to throw the ball. Like, a nice little back shoulder throw would be great, and John Franklin can't throw it. Little back shoulder throw would be fantastic. John Franklin can't throw it. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, giving me just a little slice of your day. You know that I appreciate you. We'll be talking more about college football. Who can win a national title at the SEC? Next.
Wars come and go, but my soldiers stay eternal.
Now you can listen to Hot News Talk Radio anywhere, streaming live at Noogaradio.com. That's Noogaradio.com.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Shooter Supply, any A-frame, 20% off, 10% off, 5% off. Everything in the store's on sale. 5, 10, 20. September sales days. Shooter Supply, handguns, carry permit classes, ammo and gear. You'll get 5% off of firearms, 10% off of ammo and gear, 20% off of all handgun carry permit classes. Shooter Supply, September sales days. But you gotta get here now. It's ending soon. Shooter Supply, any A-frame. We're on Hickson Pike, right around the corner, right next to the Holiday Inn Express. Shooter Supply and Indoor Range. Shooters-range.com. Order online. Shooters-range.com. September sales days.
Hi, this is Mike at Wholesale Liquidation, Highway 58, next to Taco Bell, featuring over 6,000 square feet of unique and everyday wholesale items discounted at, get this, 50 to 75% off of retail, from new and pre-owned tools to chainsaws and auto accessories. Wholesale Liquidation, Highway 58, next to Taco Bell.
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Trade Bank. Call now to get access to nearly 400 local businesses. Trade Bank. Call 877-2202. 877-2202. Trade Bank. You want to increase your cash flow, your competitive edge, attract new customers, and build a loyal customer base. You need Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call right now. 877-2202. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want with our wide variety of Trade Bank partners. For almost 30 years, Trade Bank has been your voice for small business, a member of the American Bankers Association, and in good standing with you. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation, 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
This is Mike at For the Record at Northgate Mall. We're the largest complete record store in town. We sell old and new vinyl records, celebrity posters, music posters, and we are the largest in town. Come see us.
Expect mostly clear skies to continue through the nighttime. Comfortable again overnight, lows into the lower to middle 60s. For the next several days, not much change, looking dry into the weekend with some sunshine through your midweek with hot afternoons and mild nights and highs of around 90. Dr. Ron Phillips has released the most important book he's ever written, The Unraveling of America. He pulls back the curtain and exposes those who are pulling the strings and unraveling the fabric of America. Available at Amazon or ronphillips.org. And I'm Storm Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Hot News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. The gas situation might be alleviated here soon in the Tennessee Valley. Colonial Pipeline is sending trucks to Atlanta, which are then going to be en route to Chattanooga and then to Nashville and Knoxville to help alleviate the gas problem, the gas price problem here in our area. Our major gas price problem may soon be fixed. This is following allegations of price gouging in the Tennessee Valley from different gas stations. One particular gas station was the subject of a video online which purported to show gas coming out of a gas tank, which previously had a plastic bag over it, indicating there was no gas left. The owner of that gas station says it was because air was in the system, which could have damaged the motor. The last Kmart in Chattanooga will be closing here soon on December the 11th following a liquidation sale. One last Kmart will remain open in Fort Oglethorpe, and it's supposed to stay open for quite a long time. If it's going on the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Make sure you like us on Facebook and get us on the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone.
Martin Truex Jr. is off the pace, and he is headed to the pit lane. Elliott powers around the outside. Michael McDowell pops a right front tire. Here's Martin Truex to the bottom. Blaney blocks him off, too. Meanwhile, Chase Elliott went 4 wide on the back straightaway. They're side by side for the lead.
Hear it live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Fox News Talk 1240. The voice of NASCAR.
There were words that I was hearing over the weekend. Words like obliterated, destroyed, dismantled. What the hell happened? And I was not watching the game. I did not get to watch the game, and I haven't gotten the opportunity. I have it recorded, so I will get there. I will get to watch it. But I have not seen the whole game. I have only seen highlights. But dude, what Lamar Jackson did to Florida State is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's the only way to describe that. And sure, I've heard people already doing the hyperbole thing, which we cannot help but do, right? One of the hyperbole things that we do, you have people already anointing Dak Prescott as Hall of Fame quarterback 2 games into his NFL career. People were doing it in the preseason. Dak Prescott has had 2 good showings in the NFL. I think Dak Prescott is legit. Let me get off on a side tangent here really quickly. I think Dak Prescott is the real deal. A game against the Redskins where you play well, though, is not a good test of this. I am a Redskins fan. That team's defense, especially in the secondary, any side of the field that is not covered by Josh Norman is open for you to throw to, and you might as well throw there. Don't throw to Josh Norman's side, but he only stay on the left. So really, you've got the center and the right side of the field to throw to. And that was obviously enough. Dallas did not have a ton of trouble moving the football when they really needed to. They were able to break the Redskins multiple times. Doing that, and Dak Prescott, smart to find those positions. Asking a rookie quarterback to do so is tough. I mean, you look at L.A., the Rams, where Jared Goff, the number 1 overall pick, can't even beat out Case Keenum for the job. Can't even beat out Case Keenum for the job. And then Carson Wentz looks pretty solid. He looks pretty solid too. But Carson Wentz is the number 2 pick. Dak Prescott fell out the first round, really, or would have fallen out the first round. I thought Dak Prescott should have been taken. I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft. I didn't trust Carson Wentz because I didn't watch any North Dakota State football, and all of a sudden we were talking about Carson Wentz, and I was like, oh, okay, this is one of those things where a bunch of GMs get together, hype up a guy, and then we just hear his name over and over again. But Dak Prescott, he's the real deal. But you know what? He's not a Hall of Famer just yet. And I heard somebody on ESPN the other day, I think it might have been Izzy Gutierrez, who I like but just strongly disagree with on this, that he was talking about Lamar Jackson, and I think he did it to rile up the people on Twitter. I did talk about Lamar Jackson being, so far in his career, the best college football quarterback ever. And no. There's only 3 games under that belt. No. I understand that there are 18 touchdowns in 3 of those games on the ground and through the air. I get it. No, we're not doing this. We're not doing anoint the guy as the best 3 games into his career. Not even as a joke. It's not as funny as you think it is. You cut that out right now. You just stop that in its track. It's ridiculous, and people will take you up on that. They will take you up on that. With that said, watching just the highlights of what Lamar Jackson did to Florida State, and this is how you know the guy killed it. There are plenty of highlights. Like when they show the guy's highlights, and they all have to be really just every time he scored touchdowns, because that's mostly what he was doing. He was killing it. And by the way, Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. We have you covered with college football. Tune in on Saturday for the Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio game of the week. I believe we actually do have Louisville on the schedule for one of those games. But regardless, Lamar Jackson jumped into the Heisman candidate front seat. I think that's fair to do after 3 games because a season is not quite as long as you think it is. And if he keeps playing like this, there's no reason to believe he won't win the Heisman. He's looking like the best player in college football right now. And he's got Louisville doing things that we didn't think Louisville was capable of. Louisville could win a national title if this guy keeps playing like this. They could win a national title behind this. And that's crazy to me. Because we didn't have them in the discussion last week. And their schedule thus far hasn't been incredibly strong. Florida State, who, by the way, is good. Florida State is really good. Played Ole Miss, came from behind against Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, they might have choked away back-to-back games, but they didn't choke away those games because they're bad. They're a quality football team. I mean, they've got to stay locked in and they've got to stay focused for a full 60, but that's a quality football team. And Florida State rallied and came from behind against Ole Miss, and they were able to get a win. This is a good Florida State football team. They scored 20 points. And if you score 20 points, that's not a bad score for you. The problem is that you gave up 63 points. And that is a problem. But it's not a problem for Florida State in as much as Florida State's not giving up 63 points to just anybody. They're giving up 63 points to him. Lamar Jackson was going to rip those 63 points out of Florida State, regardless of whatever it was that Florida State did. I don't think that on that day they could stop him. By the way, Louisville with the chrome red helmets, looking nice. And the butterfly Muhammad Ali sticker on the back of the helmet, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, because Muhammad Ali is from Louisville, Kentucky. So yeah, I'm really, really liking Louisville right now. I mean, I thought they were good. I thought they'd be a team to keep your eye on. They get into a pretty decent bowl game. You'd watch them in bowl season. You'd be happy with the game you saw. I thought that was going to be the deal. We're talking about a team that could, if they run the table, be in the college football playoff, and they would have to be because of how dominant it is that they look when they win and just how cleanly they clocked Florida State. And I mean, it was not even close. All over them. Like every highlight in that game was a Louisville highlight. And it wasn't just a Louisville highlight. It was a Louisville touchdown highlight. Like you didn't have time to show the other big plays that happened because they scored so much. You had to show the scores. And in a 40, 45, 50-second highlight, you can't get all of the scores in there. What? That Lamar Jackson is cold as hell. And Michael Vick, this is how you know he's cold. Michael Vick came out and said, Lamar Jackson is 5 times better than me. Now, here's the thing. I think there's a case of humility going on. When athletes see another athlete going crazy and doing great things, I think that you want to give them that badge of honor, and you don't want to sound like some kind of salty old person. So you say this person's really great. They're 5 times better than I was. Lamar Jackson is fantastic. He's not 5 times better than Michael Vick. And I'm not going to wave the white flag on that 3 games in. But B, even if you argue that he's better than Michael Vick, which I will not give up because I watched Michael Vick games at Virginia Tech. Even if you argue that, he's not 5 times better than Vick. Michael Vick was something else. Michael Vick, without the high levels of accuracy throwing the football, was still able to dominate games with his legs. You knew Michael Vick was going to run, and Michael Vick could still run it on you. And then he went to the NFL, and he kept doing it. Michael Vick went to an NFC championship game before he became a better pocket passer. So, no, I don't think Lamar Jackson is 5 times better than Michael Vick. Michael Vick will put your team to sleep. Lamar Jackson is, however, very cold. Ice cold. He is knocking you out of the game with his legs and his arm. And there is something to be said about that. And, of course, he's got the swagger and everything else that makes this look like a fantastic win. I mean, you looked at, there was a graphic on ESPN about from week to week, Lamar Jackson's Heisman chances. From week to week, from week 1 to week 2, week 2 to week 3. Vegas basically had to launch him. Like that graph just looks like from week 1 to week 2, it angled up slightly. And then from week 2 to week 3, it shot up like a straight line, basically, because that's how good you have to admit he is if you've even seen him play for a few minutes. Lamar Jackson's cold, man. There is no doubt about that. And what he did to Florida State, have mercy. I don't know if I have seen anybody do quite what it was that he did to a quality football opponent and a school in Florida State that, a lot of people thought they could win the ACC. These guys could probably get back to the college football playoff again. Because Florida State's one of the better teams in the ACC. Florida State, Clemson. I mean, now you have to throw Louisville into the mix, obviously, but in the ACC, you'd have to think Florida State is considered the cream of the crop, and they got waxed. It is, you don't see performances like that very often, but do I think we're going a little too far when we're giving Lamar Jackson the praise and we're saying things like he's the best college football quarterback I've ever seen and all that stuff? Like, no, I think we are going a little too far because I've seen Tebow as a college quarterback. Go back and watch Tebow. Go back and watch those old Florida games. Like, Tebow was a beast. Absolute beast. Tebow was fantastic. And then Vince Young, one of the more dominant football games I've ever seen. Vince Young basically by himself dragged Texas kicking and screaming to beat USC back in 2005. So, I mean, I've seen dominant college football performances, including Michael Vick's own dominant performance against Florida State a really long time ago. So, no, I don't want to give Lamar Jackson the praise of being the most dominant college football player. I do think that he can get there, though. He's definitely off to a hot start, and he's on the right track. I just don't think that we should jump to that right away. He's 3 games in. He is 3 games in. Like one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life, Jameis Winston. Andrew Luck. Like, we've seen a lot of great quarterbacks in the last 10 years. You go back further, John Elway. I mean, we get a little too hasty with this stuff. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. But speaking of the talk, that Louisville has launched themselves into the conversation to win a national championship, and they definitely can. I was looking at the SEC, and there's a lot of teams that when you look at them on paper and you go, who can make the playoff? At the beginning of the season, I looked at that list and thought, well, we've got quite a few. You've got Alabama. You've got to account for Alabama. Alabama probably will make the college football playoff again if they continue to play this way. And if Jalen Hurts continues to mature the way that he's been maturing, I can't honestly tell you that Alabama is limited by anything. They are going to be, again, the terrors of the SEC. Like, they run this. They run this. It's not up for debate. Alabama is head and shoulders the best school in this league. Period. The question is anybody else a playoff team? At the beginning of the season, I believed in Tennessee enough to say, yeah, Tennessee. I believed in LSU enough to say LSU's got a shot. LSU's got to beat Alabama, but they have Alabama at home. And LSU's got to win the SEC championship game. But that's none of those things were out of the realm of possibility. And being a 1-loss, 2-loss school, if you're LSU playing in the SEC West, and the West being as hard as it is, I felt like you could get in. I thought a dark horse, a sneaky good school, A&M, Texas A&M. Again, those three schools I thought had a shot. I thought Tennessee had a shot, as good a shot as anybody. And then you'd have to look at the other two schools in the SEC East that can also contend. That if somehow one of them managed to knock off Tennessee, either Georgia or Florida, you had to think these are the schools that have a chance to make it to at least the college football playoff. That looking at it at the beginning of the season, it was Alabama, A&M, LSU, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, in my opinion, as schools that could make the playoff. And I counted for a lot of different factors, including their schedule and the amount of returning players that they had, right? And looking at that, I thought, like, there's 6 schools. Like, they're obviously not going to all make it, but there's 6 schools that have a shot. And 3 weeks into the season, I'm not sure there's not only one. I'm not sure that it's not just Bama. I'm really sure that it's not just Bama. Texas A&M is interesting. They could throw a wrinkle into a lot of things. But Alabama stands alone. Tennessee has had some struggles that those are not good signs. And they're going to play Florida. They can't throw the ball. And you can blame Dobbs, you can blame Butch, you can blame the O-line. I blame the O-line, but it doesn't matter who you blame. The fact remains, they cannot pass the football down the field. It's hard for them to move the football. It looks like a struggle. It looks like they're going uphill every single time. Even when they score and they have good drives, it doesn't look, you don't have any of those drives where you're like, dang, that was easy. You don't have any of those. You've got a lot of Tennessee struggling to get the ball up the field. And you'll get Kamara breaking out here, and you'll get Hurd breaking out there. But you don't get consistent games from either guy. You've got Josh Dobbs' legs. You've got Josh Dobbs' legs, and that's about it. Just don't think Tennessee's got what it takes if you can't pass the ball in the SEC. Because these D-lines are not playing around. And after watching what it was that Texas A&M did, by the way, watching what it was that Texas A&M did to Auburn, yeah, Tennessee, I don't think you can beat Texas A&M. Now, obviously, you got to watch the game and let it play out, but I just don't think you can do it. And I'm not going to back off my pick. I think Tennessee still wins the East. I think they still end up in the title game. But do they make the playoff? No, I don't think they make the playoff. Which kind of stinks, because I hope that this would have been a year to try and get some of that national recognition back, get some of that Tennessee pride flowing again, because I think the league is better for Tennessee being good. But I don't think you can make the playoff. I think you can win the title game even. And you will have some costly losses along the way that's not going to make this look good for you. I mean, what you've got now is an opportunity to spoil things for Alabama. I just don't see it. And Georgia, sometimes Georgia looks worse. Sometimes Georgia looks legitimately like a worse football team than Tennessee. And after watching Tennessee play Appalachian State, I didn't think that was possible. Tennessee has their moments where they look lost. Georgia has those moments where it looks like you remember Space Jam, where the aliens came from outer space and took the powers of the NBA players. Like, they took Michael Jordan's powers and Charles Barkley's powers and Sean Bradley's powers for some reason, which Sean Bradley's only power really is just being tall. He's not actually a great basketball player, but regardless, took the talents of Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley and those guys and Patrick Ewing, and those guys couldn't play anymore. That's what Georgia looks like sometimes. Like, the Monstars came from outer space and just took Nick Chubb's powers for like a series. You taking away Jacob Eason's powers for like a quarter. And I don't know what it is that I'm looking at with Georgia sometimes. Got gutsy. They got the win against Mizzou. But why did it have to be that hard? Like, they made that game more difficult than it needed to be. By a lot. And so sometimes, because of how bad Georgia looks, I don't think that you can legitimately say, despite the fact that Georgia's somehow 3-0 too. Like Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn. Or not Auburn. Georgia and Tennessee. Some weak 3-0s. Some weak 3-0s. Like it doesn't feel like 3-0. Arkansas has had some weak 3-0s too, but Arkansas has youth. Like Arkansas has youth explain what it is that's happening to them. They are trying to figure out their identity. They've got new backs. They've got a new quarterback. They're trying to figure this all out. Youth. Georgia's got Jacob Eason. He's young. Everybody else ought to know what they're doing. Georgia should not be struggling against Nichols. Tennessee should not be struggling against Ohio. I don't think those schools can make the college football playoff. Like if I'm thinking about how the committee sees stuff, and we have a new committee this year, so when they start releasing those, I'll try and get the audio for you because I think it's very interesting to see how their mindset is and how they rate this stuff. But if you just go based on how the committee looked at things last year, struggling against weak schools, you're not getting in. You're not getting in. Even if you dominate weak schools, they look at your schedule and go, who did you play? You're not getting in. Tennessee is going to lose 2 games in this 4-game stretch, at least. At least. And my guess is it's Bama and it's A&M. You better beat Florida and you better beat Georgia. And with Georgia and Tennessee, it's one of those situations where like something's just got to give. When they play each other, something's just got to give. But Tennessee does not do a particularly great job of stopping the run. But it's going to be one of those games where it looks like, does it look like somebody stole Nick Chubb's powers? And do we have to like limit Nick Chubb running? Is that the deal? Because he is coming back from a very gruesome ACL tear. One of the more horrific knee injuries I've ever seen. What do you do with that? And if you're Georgia and Tennessee, like those are must, like when they play each other, there's must-win games for both of them. But Tennessee, Florida's your must-win. You can afford to lose 2 if you're Tennessee. You can, because it should be. And the thing is, I'm hard pressed to say your schedule should be smooth sailing after this rough patch of 4. I'm hard pressed to say that because the Ohio game really made that. The Ohio game makes that hard for me to say. The Ohio game makes that hard for me to say. Appy State makes that hard for me to say because a lot of people were like, oh, Tennessee looking down on their opponent. I don't think it was that. I think your offensive line's too tiny. I think that makes it hard to throw the ball down the field. I think that also makes it hard for you to run with your featured backs. I think your whole offense is kind of predicated on Josh Dobbs running the football, and I think that that's a problem. When Josh Dobbs is consistently one of your better rushers, you have a problem. You do. LSU, I think it's pretty obvious why LSU can't make the playoff. Because they had that horrible loss to Wisconsin, and maybe it is that LSU can rewrite the ship from here, but I have serious doubts about that offense, which is the same doubts that we have always had about that offense. But I think considering what it looks like, how it is that we haven't been able to have great Leonard Fournette games and everything else, it's hard to look at LSU and go, yeah, this is a team that's an absolute shoo-in to go anywhere. They can't beat Alabama playing like that. With that disgusting looking offense that looks like a third grader could have created it. I mean, you can't win games like that. So where we started the season looking like, oh, there's a lot of teams that have a possibility of making the playoff. Now we're just looking at basically all Alabama and Texas A&M. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me. Remember, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch. Stick around, though. Alex Jones is next.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm going to be